Thank you to everyone who stuck around for the next talk. So we're going to hear from John Bendel about how we're providing better access to our waterways. You would have noticed on the program it said Daniel Dre, but unfortunately he's been struck by the man flu and he can't make it today. So our Manager of Assets and Facilities, John Bendel, will be presenting on his behalf. John's background is in civil engineering, mostly marine related. He has worked on the construction of port facilities, coal outloading facilities, and for various port authorities. In particular, he worked with the supervision team on the construction of the Seaway. That was a construction project between 1983 and 1986. So he knows the Seaway and the sand bypass system back to front. So any question he'll be able to answer. Hear how GCWA's most recent works will benefit the marine industry, including our world-class Coomera Dredge Sediment Management Facility. I'll get you up here, John, to take over.
Morning, everybody. Okay, so what's the Gold Coast famous for? Yeah, we know it's the beaches. Everyone around the world knows the beaches and probably knows more about our beaches than anything else. We do have amazing beaches, no doubt about that. But in saying that, our waterways are just as beautiful, and we should be known as the Waterways City. And that's what the Gold Coast Waterways Authority is trying to do, is promote those waterways as much as we can. There we go. Okay, in our waterways we've got 168 kilometres of navigation channels. We've got 500 kilometres plus of canals. We've got 87 marinas as of the 31st of December 2018. And a marina is defined as a jetty, a pontoon, mooring or berth, or a combination of these that can be used to moor at least 3 watercraft. We have 466 buoy moorings throughout the waterway. We have 28% of recreational vessels. That's about 32,000 when you compare it to the rest of Queensland. We've got 26% of the state's personal watercraft. That's 7,300 jet skis. Because our waterways are so well used, we invest a significant amount of money into keeping them safe and navigable. Over half of our upcoming 4-year capital and operational works program is spent on dredging. Obviously, we have a shallow estuary area, and maintaining those channels, keeping the sand shoals at bay is a big project in itself. Just under a quarter of that program is being spent on the sand bypass system, and that's higher than usual due to special works that are happening within the next year or so. We've got to upgrade the deck on the jetty at the moment. As some of you may or may not know, it's 500 metres long. It's a concrete deck, and with contemporary standards changing for safety as far as cranes go, we've got a situation where we now have to upgrade the deck to be able to take cranes in their safe working arrangements, if you like. One of our key responsibilities is maintaining safe navigational access from the waterways to the ocean. We do this by maintaining the Seaway entrance. Over 12,000 commercial and recreational vessels use the Seaway every year, and it plays an extremely important role in the economic growth of the city. The sand bypass system, it was the first of its kind in the world, And there was lots of research and development needed to be done when it was originally constructed. To give you an indication, the jet pumps that we use to extract the sand from the ocean floor were pumps that were originally provided from the United Kingdom, and they were used in coal slurry pits, and that was all very well. But when you bring them out to Australia and you put them in a natural environment, we found that they just were not able to do the job. And the reason for that was that out in the ocean you get all sorts of rubbish, paraphernalia, you name it, that travels along the ocean floor. And the original pumps just weren't designed to cope with that sort of thing. The pumps themselves, they work on what's called the Venturi effect. So in other words, they just use high pressure water, because obviously having any sort of mechanical pumping system down under the water is not the most desirable. So there's a lot of research and development has gone into making that system work, and we are now starting to see more sand bypass systems popping up around the world, and most of them are based on the original concept design that we did back in the 80s. The Tweed River sand bypass system was based on our design, and it's operating quite efficiently as well. I don't know if any of you are very familiar with that, but back in the 60s, the rock walls of the Tweed River were extended. That caused major erosion problems for the southern beaches of the Gold Coast. And back in those days, there were not a lot of knowledge about coastal processes and how it all worked. But we learned quickly after a big problem like that. And the Tweed River sand bypass system, I said, is now based on the system that we put in place back in 1986. It's owned and operated by the Gold Coast Waterways Authority, and we have 3 full-time staff that look after the plant. It's operated during the evenings mostly and on weekends, and the reason for that is that we get cheap electricity, and we choose to operate during those times to keep the costs down. We pump approximately 500,000 cubic metres of sand each year from the southern side of the seaway over onto South Stradbroke Island. Whoops. Okay, so those 2 slides up there just give you a little bit of an indication as to what the bar entrance looked like back in 1983, and by 1986 we had constructed the seaway and created a much safer entrance. So before the seaway was built, to get into the ocean you needed to cross a very treacherous bar, and many a vessel came unstuck, unfortunately. The entrance to the river was migrating northwards at about 20 metres per year. So had it continued, the township of Kurrajee on South Stradbroke Island would have eventually disappeared. So the government of the day at the time decided to bite the bullet, spend about $50 million and put the seaway entrance in. So as I mentioned earlier on, it's been a great economic driver for the Gold Coast. It's provided a much safer access to the ocean, and it continues to do its job to this day, and will continue into the future. So that's just a shot looking from South Stradbroke Island back to the south, just to give you an idea of what it looked like when we commenced doing the works and what the old seaway entrance looked like. So what we did is we constructed as much of the two walls as we could in the dry. Obviously that cost us a lot less money than having to barge rocks across to the north side. So once the walls were partially built, we then brought dredgers in and we dredged out in between the two rock walls, and we finally built the remainder of the northern revetment once we had the old seaway blocked off, and we were able to construct it. So there you can see where the dredging has started and we're removing the material from between the two walls. As part of the project, we built Waybreak Island. That was designed to protect the beaches and the houses at Labrador, mostly from any incoming swell from a cyclone that might come through the entrance. It's designed to be a sacrificial island. It's been sitting there for 30 years now, and we've done a little bit of dredging to replace a little bit of sand along the front of it, but other than that, it sits there doing its job, hopefully waiting for the big day that doesn't come. So the jetty itself, it's a steel structure, and it's in a very harsh saltwater environment. So maintenance is a big issue for us. We do two things that are pretty important. One is to continually have a painting contract in place so that we're patching up any little repairs where paint might get damaged. And we have a impress current cathodic protection system which looks after the steel structure under the water. By doing those two things, we hope to get a fair bit of longevity out of the jetty. It was originally designed for a 50-year life or a little bit greater. We'd like to think that we'll probably go close to getting 100 years or more if you look at the way that the standard of the jetty as it is at the moment. It's in top order, and I think it'll continue that way as long as we continue to maintain it the way we do. So the running costs, we burn up about $500,000 worth of electricity each year to run the plant. Having said that, when you look at the cost of the alternative, which would be to bring dredgers into the seaway and dredge it on a regular basis, you would be paying a whole lot more than the $500,000 a year. Generally, all up, it's around about $2 million operating costs, and as I said, we pump about 500,000 cubic metres of material each year. We're also, at the moment, undertaking a project to install a ground-mounted solar, and that's to supplement the energy requirements that we have up there. We did look at putting a larger system in, but at this point in time, that really just doesn't stack up. I think as technology advances, batteries get better. One day down the track, we'll be able to use solar power to do all our pumping, and obviously we'll pump during the day instead of during the night. So that's a survey of the seaway, and as you can see, there's a little bit of a sand shoal going through there at the moment. What happens is those shoals tend to come and go. At the moment, where we've got close on 4 metres of water over that shoal, which is, for the white boats that we get in this port, is generally reasonably acceptable. We will be looking in the future at what we can do about that. We continue to monitor that shoal, and that'll determine our future management options. There we have a dredge working in the South Channel, and one of our challenges is to maintain the 168 kilometres of navigation channels. A large portion of these channels are located in the Moreton Bay Marine Park. To streamline our dredging program, we have developed a strategic approval framework. This is called the SAM Management Plan. It incorporates an environmental management framework, and it took about 5 years to develop. It involved a whole network of investigations of sediment, seagrass and other environmental values. So instead of getting an approval for every little project that we do, this is basically a blanket approval with certain conditions based on the particular area that we may be dredging. So that photo there just shows you a little bit of beach nourishment work going on Waybreak Island. What we do with most of the dredged material is use it for beach nourishment purposes. Where that can't happen, the material quite often gets taken out of the seaway and placed offshore for beach nourishment purposes. So there's a dredge, that's a trailer hopper dredge. It's obviously just come from inshore somewhere. It's taken material down towards Surface Paradise where it will dump it, and the sand will naturally migrate in towards the shore. The sand that we pump in the Gold Coast waterways is very clean. We tend to not have an issue with too many fines. You hear stories, and you no doubt all come from areas where it may not be the beautiful sand that we've got here, and finer materials can be an issue. We're pretty lucky in that most of the works we do is pretty clean sand. Where it's not clean sand, as an example, up along the Cooma River in the upstream section, we have recently constructed a dredge sediment management facility. What we'll do there is, where we do have the finer materials, that will be dredged and placed into that pond. It's basically a big settlement pond. The water and sand will get pumped into it. It'll be allowed to settle, and good water will be then drained back off it and put back into Oakey Creek. So this is just a little bit of a video of our recent development. And in fact, I believe the Minister is coming on the 31st hell for the opening, is that correct? Okay, that's my little presentation.
Thanks very much for that, John. With the day's notice, I think he did pretty well, but he definitely knows his stuff. Just wanted to open up to any questions any of you might have about the sand bypass system, dredging, or the new facility.
I'll start with one question. John, you mentioned the Gold Coast today without a sand bypass system in place.
Well, thanks for the question, Anne. It would be probably nowhere near as developed as it is today. I think the sand bypass system in the Gold Coast Seaway gave certainly the northern end of the Gold Coast the impetus to certainly develop and become a very big contributor to the economy of the area. Obviously, it's a whole lot safer than it ever used to be. Probably 95 to 99% of the time, you have no problem accessing the Broadwater. Whereas back in the old days, we'll call it, and from 83 backwards, you would have fishing boats that would be sitting out offshore for sometimes 4 or 5 days, just waiting for the weather to calm down enough for them to safely navigate the bar. So I think it's been a tremendous asset to the area over the years. Yes. Yes, we do look beyond the media. You're talking about the inside or the outside? Yeah, well look, basically we've established that there's about 500,000 cubic metres of sand passes any one point each year. So in constructing the seaway entrance, we interrupted that natural flow, a bit like they did on the Tweed River many years before that, and you end up with the erosion. So all we're really doing is bypassing the sand and replicating what Mother Nature would be doing. So, excuse me, we're not actually putting more sand on South Stradbroke Island, we're just allowing Mother Nature to take its course. And we've been pumping now for over 30 years, and generally speaking, the beaches have maintained themselves quite nicely over that time. Yes, Mike.
How long did it take, seeing the building of the seaway there, we've got 2 walls in the old seaway, how long did it take to sort of backfill north of the seaway?
Oh yeah, well that was interesting. A lot of experts told us we were not going to stop the flow in the old seaway. So we did dredge out in between the 2 rock walls first, and that took some of the pressure off it. We then had 4 cutter suction dredges working around the clock, pumping sand into the area, and it only took us a matter of 4 weeks, I guess, to actually seal off the old seaway entrance, and what they said couldn't be done was done, so it was quite impressive.
I actually have a question.
Yes.
If I was a marina operator, would I be able to use the dredge sediment facility and hire it out, or if not, let me know?
Yeah, the whole idea of putting that dredge management facility up in the Coomera, as you know, there's lots of canals up there. So, yeah, people that own marinas, they could certainly use that management facility. Council have canals in the area, entrance into the canals, they can use it. The whole idea of having the plant there is to make dredging in that whole northern area more accessible and easier to do and manage. Okay.
We don't have much more time, so thanks very much to John for that presentation. Now we're going to break for morning tea. Walk you around. We'll now break for morning tea until 11 a.m, which is down in the main conference centre. And we'd love to see you back here after that to hear from our resident scientist, Jessica Borner, on how we're planning for population growth. Thank you very much.